Incoming.
All right, hello again. It's Slim Reaper here from the bunker with Bunker Bros. I'm here today with Tanner Yackley. Tanner, why don't you go tell us a little bit about yourself, your history in the military, and what brings you here to talk today?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, thank you so much for having me. I greatly appreciate it. And yeah, so Tanner Yackley, I was in the Air Force from 2010 to 2018. I was on the MQ-9 Reaper, big beautiful bird up there, as a sensor operator for the entire 8 years. I flew over 1,000 combat missions, 300-400 hours in RPAs. Did a little MQ-1 time as well. Primarily all MQ-9 there, and then I taught at the schoolhouse, ran the weapon shop down there for a while, and then worked for General Atomics for a couple of years as an evaluator doing their launch and recovery, and then taught as a professor for a couple of years as well, so teaching all UAS courses and things there. So and now I run a mental health organization for helping anyone that was in remote combat operations there and maybe struggling from it, because I recognized in myself that I was going through a lot and dealing with a lot, and that remote combat is providing a lot of unique challenges per se to the mental health world when it comes down to it. And so now it's just trying to help bolster those areas so that way people don't end up joining the 22 a day and everything else there, because they feel like that they're alone and trying to bring a voice to it all.
So I was going through your website, and it kind of made me think, because I'm one of these people too, because I didn't even think about it. But I mean, drone warfare has been going on, at least for the U.S. military, for the last 20 plus years. Not so much in the spotlight, but all around, right? Like the MQ-9 is not a new platform, and its use is not new either. So what do you think I guess the lack of a discussion like this, where would it come from? Why was it missing for the last 20 years? Because this is not a new thing.
No, not at all. I mean, the RPAs as a whole came on in '96. There's a quick history lesson there. It's first, they had them. They had a Predator, literally above who is it, Bin Laden, in 2000, if I remember right. And then we pulled the first trigger in 02 there with the Predator, after General Jumper wanted to have everything armed, as far as, because they realized how big of a mistake it was to not have these things armed. And then 08, the Reaper came on board, and really, the teens, where my time was, is where this all literally blew up. I mean, they wanted them, overhead everybody, and that kind of thing. And that's really where I think where a lot of this kind of got lost in translation, if you will, right? Because look at the teens and look at, everybody wanted more, right? Every JTAC, Joint Terminal Air Controller, wanted, somebody on the ground, or wanted somebody above them while they were on the ground, with it, because it gave, that tactical advantage. And so what's the hard part about this, right, is there's multiple issues with it. One, it's not addressed, in the units themselves. While yes, there's areas, there's still like psychologists that are on board and they're doing a great job. You can't replicate, that understanding and that camaraderie, right, with a person in a mental health profession and the air crew. Unless they understand it and have sat in the seat and done the mission, they're just not going to understand. And so there's always going to be some type of natural disconnect there, right? And then you make it a super, convoluted process for one, the VA doesn't even address it. The VA doesn't even recognize it, right? Anybody in remote warfare isn't even looked at as a combat veteran. So we have foundational problems here before we even get to the mental health issue with all of this, because people still look at it as a video game and do all the cliche crap that we've heard of for, years, right? I mean, what I grew up in the community, when I first joined it in 2010, it was all the crap we were hearing back then that we're still hearing, right, with it. And, it's just a video game. You get to go home every night and you're sitting in an air-conditioned box. What's the big deal? Right? And it's like, man, that couldn't be further from the truth. Like, you're performing high-stakes missions and high-stakes decisions almost daily. right? With it, and you're part of this kill chain that you're 60 seconds away from pulling a trigger at any given time. With it, because that's what that aircraft does, and that's what the capability. Right? You don't need to sit here and mission plan, and we're not World War II where we're sitting here and sending in a squadron of aircraft and planning these air interdiction type missions where we're going in, hitting a target and bouncing out. We're going in and collecting for days, weeks, months, years on end. And these aircrew are required to do all of it. Right. And that's the part that I think is missing to a lot of this is one, people don't recognize how much that it's not like, yes, there's intel and things like that, as far as like other operators there, but for the air crew specifically, like you're still having to take ownership of all of those aspects. Right. So it makes it more personable, right? It makes it you have more of a stake, right? And then same thing with anybody supporting it, right? You're literally watching this stuff live. It's not that you get to sit there and watch a snapshot, right? You think of like a U2 snapshot or something, right? Of some still or an RQ4 or whatever it is, right? That you get to sit and make decisions on, right? You get to sit and mull that over, right? FMV is a different beast because you're having to make real-time decisions constantly, right? And that are taking lives, saving lives, all of it, right? And so it's not just this, so it's a different type of intel and it's a different type of warfare that we haven't recognized how much we're putting on these operators and how much we're putting on these pilots, these sensors, the intel, anybody in the kill chain throughout because of the real time decision making that they're having to make and do it with sometimes very little information. And just you got to kind of, lack of a better term, trust your gut. With some of it.
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying, yeah, you might not be on the ground fighting, but like we even talk about workplace stress and like the business
Mm-hmm.
field and how workplace stress is affecting people and, heart problems and heart conditions are arising from just stress in the workplace. So it's wild to me that we don't have any type of uh, mainstream study going on, for operators behind a screen that are literally making these decisions with that stress every day, right? Um,
Exactly.
so, and you kind of mentioned at the ground level, at the core of this problem, there is no system in place for this type of discussion. So, I guess what would you want to see change at the base level for operators themselves?
Absolutely. So I think a handful of things need to be done here, right? Because it's not going to be this one, band-aid fix per se, for something like this that's going to move the needle, right? We have people dying constantly from this, unfortunately, right? Suicide rates in this area, I challenge anybody to go look at them. Because it's going to be the second we peel that back, we're going to be like, oh shit, we fucked up. Because I mean, dear God, the Holloman just had a suicide 6 months ago at the schoolhouse and then a permanent party instructor pilot. And people are, and I'm not going to get into it and then the why and everything else, right? That's for their family and their business. But at the end of the day, this shit is still happening and we're still acting like, it's not that big a deal. Right. I mean, I was standing in the room of a buddy that literally pulled the trigger 24 hours later, and I had no flipping clue, not a clue, that it was happening. And so it's ridiculous because that, and we've lost so many people to it. They've driven off into the wilderness and things like that, and just left their families and everything else. So it's ridiculous that we one don't recognize it as a problem, and then two, like you allude to, how do we fix it? Well, it needs a full systemic overhaul, right? We need education for one. We need to educate people why this is a problem, right? Because it's not just this, oh, hey, I got to sit there, watch the top of a mud hut for 12 hours and then go home. Oh, my job is so hard, right? That's not what's happening here, right? It's you're sitting there and bouncing from target to target to target. You're watching people die and then immediately shifting on to normal, patterns of life, whatever, there. You're having to watch the locals rip each other apart, right? Literally. I mean, if you can think of a way that somebody can kill another human being, I've seen it behind a screen. And that's the hard part, right? And that's what people don't realize, especially when you factor in we watch the strike videos like football tape, right? We sit there and rewatch this stuff over and over and over to get better. Well, it's a little different when you're lugging a rock, rather compared to now I'm dealing with a person dying, and I've got to sit there and watch that over and over and over again. So there's two pieces to this, right? Identity crisis and moral injury are two of the biggest issues that stem from this field in my research with this area. And these are areas that, while they're touched on here, there's not the focus. And they really need to be, because it's affecting people's day to day. So one, it's going to take the units themselves to recognize that it's a problem, right? They need to focus more on moral injury and burnout, and actually give their commanders and stuff ways to recognize that, and not just, oh, the mental health will catch all. The commander can put it on the warfighters. Like, that's great. But if you're going to lead your people, you need to care about their mental health too. And if you're going to send them to war to kill people, you need to care about their mental health too. And they need to walk the walk and talk the talk. They can't just pay freaking lip service to this crap anymore, because it's getting people killed when it comes down to it. And so it needs to start at the units themselves. And that's one area that I'm working, right? I'm working with a couple guard units. I'm working with actually the Creech Human Performance Team at Creech Air Force Base to alleviate this and really pool resources and figure out how can we do this better across the board. Because like I said, at the end of the day, this is nobody's fault, right? That this has come to such an issue, but it damn sure is if everybody keeps ignoring it. And that's the part where it's just, I get frustrated with the leaders and things like that I've worked for, and people don't even realize that it's an issue and don't even take it seriously. I mean, you have active squadron commanders, right? And I won't name names, but you've got active squadron commanders that I sit there and just, it's not that big a deal. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, you're having these people make life or death decisions every single day, right? With it, and then go home and go deal with your kid's birthday party, go deal with an anniversary, go deal with, whatever. And I say deal with it because it is dealing with it. You are having to go in and flip that switch, right? As we call it, flipping the switch, right? From work to home, to work, home to work, and going from I'm a warfighter to now I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm a wife, I'm whatever. There, I'm a father, I'm a mother, whatever it is, and you've got to go deal with that. And that's the part that nobody prepares you for, right? Is how do you deal with your home life, right? When you get home, do you take that uniform fully off and disconnect? Or do you sit there in a santee and green socks and basketball shorts and putz around for 4 hours, and then you can't figure out why your brain can't freaking let go of the military side of things, right? With it all. So it needs to start at the units. It then needs to trickle and hit everywhere else, right? We need the VA, one. Don't get me started on this, but I mean, we are, right? That's the whole purpose of this, is the VA needs a flipping overhaul in this entire area. They're still stuck in the 1970s with shell shock and PTSD. It's great they've added on to the VA utilizes what's called the Diagnostical and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders. It's called the DSM-5. And it's essentially put out by the American Psychology Association, stating this is all the mental disorders and this is what it looks like if you have one, right? Well, PTSD, it's great. It's got a criterion on there called Alpha 4 that says, hey, if your trauma was seen within electronic means and it's work related, it's valid. But that crap is overlooked by every freaking mental health professional in the freaking industry. They don't buy in because they don't realize how much of an impact that is. Right? I mean, think about it. We sit there and talk about people that have to scrub Facebook, right? And from all the horrible stuff that they have to see, right? Because you've got just insane people that try to post just horrendous stuff on there, and somebody's got to scrub it, right? And somebody's got to sit there and watch it. And if they're allowed to have, trauma from that, why in the hell is somebody that's operating an aircraft halfway around the world and taking a life and watching a life being taken sometimes daily not allowed to have trauma? That's a load of shit in my mind when it comes down to it. So one, we've got to stop with this comparing and, it's, blah, blah, blah. Trauma's trauma at the end of the day. Trauma doesn't discriminate. Trauma doesn't care. Right? Trauma doesn't care how, what you went through or if your boot's on the ground or if you're sitting in a freaking air conditioned box. Your brain still understands that what you're watching is death and destruction. and that's not natural, all right? With it, and when you have to watch that on repeat over and over and over again, it makes for a really difficult time, right? And that's why when you get, and I bring the history of this up earlier because look at where we're at. I just said the MQ9 came on in '08. Well, in 3 years, it's going to be 2028, which means you're going to have the first wave, and you already do. You have the people at 17 and 18 years right now that have sat it for the first time in history and sat in the box for 20 years. And that's the piece that we need to be looking at so quickly. Because so the VA needs to do their job correctly. One, recognize us as combat veterans because I'm sorry, but if I have over 1,000 combat missions, 5 personal strikes that I've done, and freaking 20 KIA, what the hell? What other box do I need to check here? Right, at this point for it, so they need to be there needs to be recognition for the VA. There needs to be better intake because the PCL5 is crap. It's the PTSD checklist. It's the one that the VA uses. And while for traditional PTSD, there's a valid point to it. But what isn't valid is when you zoom out and you start looking at World Health Organization documentation, and they use what's called the ICD-11. I don't remember what it stands for off the top of my head, but that has complex PTSD in it. Complex PTSD is for cumulative trauma, right? Seeing trauma over and over and over and over again. Well, so that's one that I would love to see down the road that gets adopted by the US, because right now it's currently only held by the World Health Organization. I think it's mainly came from the UK with that. But there's some VA docs and things like that I'm working with that have had a hand in that as well. So we're trying to push for reform right within the VA itself and actually get a study going. And I'm in the process of writing out the questions for that study with the VA, because this needs to get addressed, right? And so the VA needs to recognize it. They need to have their own rating for it. Because like personally for me, right, I've got a service dog. I can't do, there's times where, and this is the hard part, right? With a lot of people that came from this career field, they were high functioning, right? They were the best of the best, right? When it came down to it. But now you've got one little noise, one little trigger, and can just shut them down for half a day, 3 days, whatever, right? Whatever your nervous system decides at that point. And so it's hard to be able to do, traditional work and things like that. So then the disability stuff comes into play with the whole thing, and needing a reform there with it. So, the VA needs to get overhauled. Industry, they need to just acknowledge it for one. I mean, you've got some of the biggest manufacturers that also actively train and deploy these individuals that are just, it's fine. They just, their wallets are getting stuffed, so they don't care about their operators, and they don't care about their mental health, and they don't care what it's doing to them, unfortunately, and they're losing some of their best of the people, right? I mean, I left a contract job from where I put up my all into it, and I had to finally leave it because it was just chewing me up at the end of the day. So it's difficult because there's no one size fits all answer to that question, really, what it comes down to, right? The industry needs an overhaul. Guard and reserve, same thing, right? They need the education piece to it, right? With it, and understanding that this is an issue, right? And that especially in those environments, doing that more, I don't want to say like traditional, right? Roles with it, it's gonna be a little more impactful, if you will, because it's more isolated as far as if they watched a strike or something like that, and then they got to sit there and just go, and they have to deal with more home life, if you will, than they do work at times, right? Depending on if they're on like AGR orders or what was it called, like Title 10 orders back in the day. I'm assuming it's still the same.
It's a
Yeah. So, if they're doing that, or they're doing that, every day, it's different. We had plenty of guys that were attached to our reserve units and stuff that were everyday flyers, right? With it. So it's a unique challenge that nobody's looking at, right? With this whole thing. And realizing like, oh, these people have to now deal with more home than they do work, potentially, depending on how how their contract and everything else is. But it's a factor that's not even being looked at. It's just, we're, hey, we got a chaplain in the unit, so we're good. And, this is no disrespect to anything that any of the chaplain corps or anything like that are doing. That's absolutely needed. But the problem is you've got a group of people that got told to shut up and color for a really long time, right? Got told, hey, what you're doing doesn't matter. Hey, what you're going through is super secret and you can't talk about it, right? You can't talk about your work with anybody. You can't acknowledge anything like that, right? With it. And so what does that do? That leads to, well, then I can't talk about anything to do with my work, including my mental, with the entire thing. And so then people isolate, then people get divorced, then people, have their families fall apart, because of this isolation that it causes, and causes you to think that, oh, I'm alone. And all reality, no, we're all facing it. It's just nobody talks about it because that's this weird, side effect, if you will, that again, nobody saw, with it. And I've said this before, the whole entire thing was, hindsight is 2020, right? We can't do anything to change the way that we introduce this, but we can absolutely do many things to project it forward in a better path, and to support these, individuals that may be struggling and may just need a little bit of help, right? With it, and then be able to get back on their game and push forward. But too often we just see it as a black and white. Either you can do your job or you can't, and there's no in between, with it. And I think that's, especially with everything that, the Secretary of Defense just said, with what they're trying to go back for and everything else. And I'm not going to get political or anything like that, but it's just, if you're trying to go back to a fighting force, that's great and all, but you can't make just zombified people that are just sitting there and waiting to take orders. I understand, yes, that does play a part. At the same time, if you want your high performers to continue to succeed, then you have to care about their mental health too, and take care of that as well. Because nobody is Superman, nobody is superhuman, right? I mean, I've watched some of the best people in the world just be shells of themselves because of the impacts of all this. So it's so, again, back to your original question, it's going to be a full-blown systemic approach as far as this goes, and needing really a strip down and overhaul of the entire thing, or at least some strong additions, right? And really bringing in that operator's voice. And we've seen a lot of success with that, right? We've got a Discord of 150 people. The video that I interviewed with Business Insider a couple weeks ago, that came out, and that's a 200,000 plus views. So it's getting there, right? That the information's getting out there, the story is getting out there, and people are realizing how big of an issue is. Now we just need the right people to act. Is really comes down to it, because we are showing how big of a problem is, and there's plenty of people. I get DMs every day of people like, "Hey, thanks for putting a voice to this. Like, you're saying exactly what's in my head." And like, that's the whole reason I'm doing this, is just I'm tired of losing people, and I'm tired of losing friends and things like that, because people just think they're alone. And it's like, hell, we're sitting 3 feet away from each other thinking the same damn thing, but because nobody says it out loud, somebody goes and puts a shotgun in their mouth. I'm not okay with accepting that anymore. So it's really just trying to put a voice to the entire thing, but also have sustainable and actionable plans for all of it.
Yeah. You're saying a systemic overhaul. I think it's interesting because like all these things that we have already exist, just not for you and
Hmm.
people like you, which I think is crazy. Like my first deployment in Iraq, it was during the push. ISIS, took back Iraq, and we were reinvading Mosul, taking back all the bases that we had taken, years prior. I was attached to a HIMARS battery, and the HIMARS battery was doing strikes multiple times a day. They ended up doing like 150 combat missions, firing like 300 something rockets into combat. And it's a weird thing to think about, kind of like paralleling what you're talking about. They didn't see the effect of what they were doing until much, much later. So, it was called combat scroll radio is what we called it. But every day the CJTFOIR would come out and basically say over the like net, be like, hey, this battery did these strikes. Here's the BDA. They'd read out like the casualty listings from the BDA, who called in the the fire mission if it was a fire mission.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you know, the kill counts were just racking up, and like obviously you're not supposed to have kill counts, but like this unit did, and it was like they reached over 400 EKIA within, you know, 3 months of being there. 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I could see it start to affect these dudes. Like as CJTF OIR was like telling them how many people they were killing, what they were destroying, I could see eventually it was kind of affecting how they were, you know, their outlook, the way they're moving, the way they're talking, like who they were. So they switched out these crews halfway through. And then on our rotation back home, we were in Erbil, and this lieutenant was talking to me in this chow hall, and he's like, "Oh, you guys are part of that unit." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, I have all your drone feeds from the BDAs." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Yeah, I have all the BDA footage from all your strikes."
Mm-hmm.
And he gave it to me. So I gave it to that unit, and so now they could put all these missions with a video, and I was like, I don't know if what I did was good, but I think they deserve the choice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of fucked, man. Like it was like
Yeah.
watching all that for the first time. Like I think I watched the video 2 or 3 times, and then I was like, all right, now it's, you know, sitting on a shelf dusty somewhere. But
Yeah.
and even then, you know, obviously you rotate back through Erbil, and the army wouldn't let these soldiers leave Erbil for 10 days. So like these guys sat in Erbil as a decompression for like 10 days,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and they weren't in direct action. Like they weren't in direct fire conflict. And then they went back home, and, you know, they sat in Fort Bliss for like another 2 weeks for another decompression period to get like checked for TBIs and stuff. So like the care is there. It exists. They
Mm-hmm.
know it exists because they did it for these guys. And this is back in 2014 or 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And like why we can't just have the same focus for people stateside. And I know there's a unit here. I can't remember if it was in Michigan or not, but they were like, oh yeah, we're deploying. They're a drone unit. And they're like, yeah, we're deploying next month or whatever. This is probably a couple years ago now. And I was like, oh, what's that look like? They're like, oh, well, we go to Selfridge. I was like the airbase here? They're like, yeah. I was like, your deployment is you go to the airbase here. They're like, I was like, so like, do you get locked in there? They're like, no, like you work the week and you can have the weekends off, or, you know, maybe you'll work the weekend and I have 3 days off during the week. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
and you just go home? They're like, yeah. I was like, that's wild. Like
Mm-hmm.
that is, if soldiers needed a decompression period after being in combat overseas, why would you just let these dudes go, like, you know, do these combat missions all day on a
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday, go
Mm-hmm.
back to their families on a Wednesday, spend
Mm-hmm.
2 days with their families, and then go back to like schwacking ISIS dudes in the desert on Friday? Like that is absolutely asinine to me. And I'm not saying lock these dudes in or anything, but there needs to be some type of safety blanket where these dudes aren't flipping that switch, like you said, back and forth, on and off, multiple times a day, multiple times a week. Because, dude, it takes, you know, me and my friends weeks to flip that
Yeah.
switch when we come back after like 6-9 months.
Well, and
And
that's the thing. The damn thing gets stuck on,
yeah,
right? At that point, I mean, you're home, but you ain't home,
yeah,
right? I
because you're
mean,
thinking about
we see,
today and tomorrow,
yeah,
and
exactly. You're like, hey, I wonder if we killed that dude that I've been tracking for the last week,
yeah,
right? You know, that kind of stuff, and you know, it's ridiculous when you think of it that way. That, and two pieces to this, right? You talked a little bit about like deployment cycles, right? And oh, you get, you know, what's the natural theme here? You get breaks, you get downtime, right? Fucking we didn't ever, right? We did. I mean, I did 4 years of combat, 4 years, nonstop, no breaks, no. I didn't get a week off, right? I mean, I get one holiday a year. And the other time I'm sitting with a freaking, you know, as funny as this is, a joystick in one hand and a turkey leg in the other. Right? And just sitting there hacking the mission. And That's great, but when you don't give any breaks whatsoever, and they tried, right? And they guinea pigged the hell out of us, and we're like, oh, let's do Panama schedules, and let's do all these other schedules, and a 2-3-2, and a 3-4-3, and a 5-3, and all these different ones, right? That they tried, but it doesn't fucking matter when, again, it's such short sighted with it all, because it doesn't matter because of the longevity of the operations that you're doing. And when you're having to do it for years on end, right? With it, and then flip back and forth, with the entire thing. And then your break is like, oh, let's go down to the schoolhouse and get, freaking just put on blast there, for teaching and stuff like that. Which it's like, oh, you whatever, you're just teaching an event. And it's like, hell no, you got to go in and prep. You got to freaking brief the thing. You got to do the event. You got to debrief the student. And half the time I was doing that twice a day, every freaking day. The hardest thing in the world? Hell no, right? There's way tougher shit out there, right? But it didn't make it, the burnout and everything else was just so egregious. I mean, if they looked at first term airmen, especially for that career field, right? Obviously pilots can be a little different with their contracts and their commitments and different things there. But on the enlisted side, like, shit, look at the freaking, I would love to see the retention rate for that career field, for how many people bailed out after the first, their first term, because I did two 4-year enlistments, and I was kind of wedged in between a bunch of people that did 6. So I saw people come in and then saw people leave, kind of thing. And it was like the majority of the career field got out after the fact, or at least went and swapped for a polo where they could make 3 times more, money doing this exact same thing, just for a different organization, if you will, right? At the end of the day, so it's, like I said, it's complicated because of the nature of the operations, right? The training that we was just non-existent too. There's still times, and I'm sure they're still doing it, where we would train literally on target. We didn't get dedicated training time. It was just make the best of it. And we're sitting staring at the top of a hut that we can't move eyes off of because we're doing 24/7 operations. And that's the thing. You're not putting jets on alert and sitting around and, all right, just wait for the call. Like, fuck no. This is just go 24/7, 365, right? With it. And after, almost 20 years of doing it, we're still not looking at the impacts that that's having, with it. I mean, there's enough studies with, crazy schedules and different things like that. It's why, like, nursing has such a high burnout rate, with it, is because of the extensive jumping around shifts and different things like that. And so that's the crazy part, is you can pull lessons from nursing with this. I did a lot of studying on that for my undergrad with the comparison, especially with like surgeons and stuff. And kind of the, methodical checklist, if you will. And so it's, the same thing that we did, back then, is everything was methodical. You knew the cadence, you knew the syllables, right, that were going to come out of somebody's mouth when they were run through a checklist. You knew the inflection that they were going to put on it, the tone, all of it. Right. And so when you're operating at that high of a level for years on end, like, of course you're going to burn out, at that point. But it's those little things that nobody's addressing, right? It's those little things that, like, oh, let's give you a space, that you can truly decompress, within it, and give you time to truly decompress, with it, and put you in just, a training exclusive environment, because that's the biggest thing with like a deployment to dwell cycle, right? A lot of times when you're home, right? You're training and stuff like that, but you're not doing active combat, right? You're doing that when you're overseas, to an extent, where we didn't get that luxury, right? We would just do it every single day, and the training was almost like, secondary, to it all, and just like, we'll make it work, kind of thing. And half the time that's what we did. I mean, good God's sakes, the entire career field was pulled from the fighter pilot community. I mean, the entire thing was established on the backs of fighter pilots. It was anybody that had any blemish on their record. They pulled back in 2010. They started pulling people over and forcing them over to, that career field. And anybody that, they were pulling people, at random, just trying to fill the career field. And so you had a bunch of people with chips on their shoulder, right? Because you just took them out of their, fast moving, 600 knot jet and threw them in a freaking bird with a lawnmower strapped to its ass. And now all of a sudden, you know, they're bitter and pissed off, but they're damn good. At the end of the day. And so that was the benefit of it was, I get trained by some of just the most salt of the earth pilots. But, I had a handful that took me under their wing and trained me and, made me a great aviator. I'm thankful for that, but it's all those little things that people don't realize and don't realize the impacts that it's having. And then you're trying to deal with shift work, and then you're trying to deal with going home every night, and then you're trying to deal with, not having training time, not having dwell time, not, doing anything there. And it's just combat for years on it.
Yeah, I think you talked about a little bit before referencing education.
Mm-hmm.
I think your biggest hurdle here is going to be the way of thinking for, the generation of warfighter that we have. Like the Army's going through right now. We're back in conflict. I guess we never left, but we're in conflict currently in Syria, and it's really touchy because we're not at war with anybody there. Like we're under the Hunt ISIS banner. But I could tell I just got back from Syria like last year, 2 years ago, and I didn't see any ISIS. I did get attacked by like Iranian proxy forces and Russian proxy forces, and I definitely saw zero ISIS.
Yeah.
Or at least in a combat situation. But so I guess the way of thinking right now is like, if you aren't in like a tick, like if you're not troops in contact firing at the enemy, the Army and, I guess the Department of Defense just does not see it as combat, which I think is wild. So like we have dudes that are fighting for Purple Hearts because they got hit by rockets, got TBIs, we got cluster bomb. We had dudes get, wound Purple Hearts from that, but we got a bunch of TBIs that don't qualify for Purple Hearts. And the whole argument is like, well, it's not considered combat because it wasn't direct action with the enemy. And so like the Army's in this fight with itself, and I think it's going to end up, being the same with you guys. It's going to might end up fucking you, is like, the Army doesn't want you to have things. They don't want to give you stuff. The Air Force doesn't give a shit about you, and they will fight tooth and nail to keep you from getting what you're owed. Like we have dudes that are, their lives are not the same coming home, and they just want, a piece of paper that says they did what they did, and the Army's like, fuck you. So the way of thinking is one, but I think the Army, so like they came out with a new TBI test. I want to say it was my second deployment. Well, I went to Afghanistan and CRC. They do this TBI test, right? They sit you in front of a computer and you do all these like baseline questions and motor drills to like see how your brain is on a normal day. And then you come home and you're supposed to do like another one to see if your brain's different and how you react is different. Well, they did that initial one for everybody, and then when everyone came home, they just never did the follow-up one. And now everyone's like, well, I have a TBI. They're like, well, where's the proof? Like, bitch, you fucking never did it. Like you didn't do what you said you were going to do. So like, my fear is that like, even if you get what you're supposed to get, like, even if this conversation reaches the levels you want it to, is like, the military's still going to fuck it up.
And, yeah, absolutely. And that's where I think it needs to be a mass thing, right? And it needs to be a rally from the community. It needs to be pushing the voices out there. It needs to be talking about it, because that's the only way the change happens, right? Is you force enough people to go, hey, this is a problem and this is an issue and we need to fix it. And so the more people that are out there talking about it and putting light to it, the more apt that you're going to get that change, right? And you're not going to have the Army or the DoD or whoever just go, oh, well, it's not that big of an issue, or, oh, it doesn't affect this many people and different things there. So, and that's where we're trying to, do a lot with the data side of this and be able to prove those numbers, right? I'm working with the VA right now with the Veteran Experience Office to get exactly how many veterans, like sensor operators, pilots, intel, that type of thing. How many numbers actually truly exist out there? Because that's something that we don't have, right? No one's ever looked at there to really see, all right, what is the baseline population of this and how many people does this truly affect, right? Because I hate the argument, well, it's just such a small group. It's like, well, one, the hell's wrong with you? Like, it doesn't matter if it's one person or, 100,000. Like, if they're struggling, they should get help. And they should be given help when it comes down to it, because they went in, they signed a paper, and they did a freaking job, and they did it in defense of this country, and yet we're sitting here and arguing over papers and oh, well, it doesn't qualify, and over regulations that don't fucking matter at the end of the day, right? It's the regulations and different things are made up by some asshole in a fucking suit that's never seen fucking war, but he's going to tell me if I'm deserving or not of benefits and help and different things like that. Bullshit. It's like freaking get these people what they're owed, take care of them correctly. Because, oh, by the way, the people that are filling your contract slots that go to all your shitty deployed locations, right? Like Africa and different things like that, with it are your prior operators, right? Your prior pilot sensors, different things like that, within it. So that all they do is swap the flight suit for a polo, go make six figures, and go to just absolute crap locations. So if we don't take care of them while they're in, we don't take care of them while they're getting out, we don't take care of them in industry, you're going to lose your workforce and you're going to lose your security for the nation as a whole. Because look at how many freaking reapers and stuff we have all around the world doing different operations and different things, right? These aren't going anywhere. I mean, dear God, Skydio just signed a contract with the Department of Defense, and everybody's shift is UAS and RPA and everything else.
Well, as you're seeing on
So
the front lines across the globe, this is the future of warfare.
exactly.
And, so do you think that fortunately, unfortunately, this this what we're seeing in Ukraine and Russia is helping your case by all of these videos coming out day after day after day of drone use?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because people are able to see, I mean, it's literally think of like what was it, 15 years ago? It's like Call of Duty coming out with the first Predator missile, in the game with it, and you can watch the thing like come down. I mean, that's arguably what we're seeing with these,
Yeah.
with these quads and stuff that they're ripping around and strapping C4 and grenades and drop harnesses and everything else to there. And so absolutely, because people are seeing the real world effects of what these are doing. I just watched a video yesterday of some, I don't know if it was Russian or Ukraine, but they were like, there was a quad like going at them on the back of a truck, and they literally shot it like 10 feet away from the truck, and it like blew up, kind of thing. So it's showing it's allowing the public to see the realism of war, right? When it comes down to it. And so I think that's the big piece to this is, yes, there's been videos, you get the body cam footage and stuff like that with it, but it's just a little different when you see it and it's, up close and personal, right?
Well,
Because think
someone's
about,
operating this thing. Like someone,
yeah,
yeah, it's not.
yeah.
They're not watching it on their phone on fucking YouTube. They're doing it.
Exactly. So, I think there's a lot that's going to come from that. And I mean, I already know there is, right? There's already doctors and different things like that that are going to Ukraine and doing stellar ganglion blocks, right? Which is like a shot in your neck to help your vagus nerve that runs through your chest that is responsible for your fight, flight, freeze, and fawn symptoms. I had one done. It's fucking amazing. It's literally saved my life. Because it was just so egregious and so ridiculous. And it was a 2-day process. I flew out to Chicago, got a shot in my neck one day, got a shot in my neck the other side the next day. I slept the whole damn time. And about a month later, it was like a flip or a switch flipped in my head that it was like, you know what? I don't need to sit here and analyze every damn thing for threats and do this constant scanning and constant rumination of what horrible thing can happen when I go to the gas station to get a pop, kind of thing. So that's my quick plug on an SGB. If anyone is seriously struggling, that's a great process. And we're actually working on standing up our foundation We're hoping by the end of the year we'll have our foundation established to be able to provide the auxiliary, so like hotel, airline, different things like that, to send any remote combat warrior that's dealing with it and needs the procedure done. I'm partnering with a doctor in Chicago in the works to get partnered with him to have them cover the procedure, we cover the travel, and that way it's at absolutely no cost to them there too. So hopefully by 1 Jan we'll have that established and start raising the funds for it, because it'll cost about $5,000 to send somebody for a 4-night hotel, flying from wherever, Ubers per diem, for food and stuff like that. Because that's the thing, most of the people that, especially in this area, that are dealing with that, they're shells of themselves, and are usually in isolated areas and different things there with it, because they don't want to deal with people that don't understand, and that's why people isolate, right? That's why as much as we talk, combat veterans are a unique group, because the sad part is the average person isn't one. Right. I don't necessarily think, I don't think it's the sad part, but
Yeah.
just the unfortunate. Yeah, I realized
Yeah.
as I said that, the unfortunate reality, right? Let's put it that way, is most aren't, right? And so when people are, and dealing with it, and it doesn't matter in what facet, it's just a unique thing, right? To have seen combat, to taken a life, different things there with it. It's a completely different ball game, and it's something that I think personally too, the VA should have their own freaking care for combat veterans too,
It isn't.
and
It
and
is an
and as an
isolating
own.
thing. Like
Yeah.
itself, being a combat vet is isolating because you
Hmm.
feel like there's so few of you, which is true. There is so
Hmm.
few of you, especially nowadays. So you're like, well, nobody knows what I'm going through.
Hmm.
Nobody understands. Yeah, I think it'd be great. Yeah, to have a dedicated support system. Which I mean, kind of. I guess that's kind of what we're doing with Bunker
Hmm.
Pros.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but more on the healthcare side, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
even like I was at a conference in El Paso a couple weeks ago, talking to some medical providers there and things like that, and we were talking about it, and it's like, why wouldn't you have, even at like every VA, and don't get me wrong, I understand the logistics and the nightmare and all this would be, but something to the effect, right? And maybe somebody can run this idea is, why don't you have at every VA, like, have a representative that's actually done the freaking job, right? That you want to talk about, you got the social worker and stuff like that that works there, but like, freaking have a prior JTAC, have a sensor operator, have whatever, to be able to kind of be a liaison, if you will. And I understand, right? You're not going to have that for every single role. That'd be insane. But why wouldn't you do that for like the combat roles, right? Where that were identity crisis and different things like that, because you went from such a high paced scenario, right, where you were literally tip of the spear, you're literally making an impact, you're doing everything that epitomizes the military, right? You are that warrior, right, regardless of what the job is, whether you're flying a jet, or kicking indoors, you are doing what the military is, the epitome of it. But when we come back, you get shoved in the same queue as everybody else. And no offense to anybody that's 80 plus, but I shouldn't be sitting in the same line as some dude trying to get his blood pressure medication, that's 80 plus years old. There needs to be a different process there for somebody that, because as we know, combat veterans deal with unique stressors, deal with, higher suicide rates, different things there. Yet we don't do anything, and I say we as the VA, don't do anything to help that unique group of individuals that's at the highest risk. Right? We come up and don't get me wrong, there's great foundations and things like that, but they're all stamped with, oh hey, you don't fit into our clique, so we can't help you. Right? And there's no central point that somebody can just go and go, hey, this is my MOS or this is my AFSC, this is what I was doing. I need assistance, right? And to be able to turn around and go, all right, here's your tailored assistance for your specific group, right? Because just like you said, right, the recognition, when you're filing a claim, different things like that, all of it is unique, right? I can't go up, you and I can't go sit down in a room together, fill out a VA claim the exact same on both pieces of paper, and expect, anything of substance to come from that, right? It's not going to work. So it's understanding and being able to speak the same language as these other individuals around you, and being able to help facilitate that for the claim process, right? And be able to help facilitate that for speaking your language, right? And being able to know, oh, hey, did you go through any of these XYZ scenarios, as a combat controller, as a machine gunner, as a, whatever. Then cool, let's think about that. Because at the end of the day, you don't know what you don't know. So how the hell are we going to expect anybody to roll into a VA process and just, oh, hey, file a claim, just whatever condition, and people don't understand. I mean, shit, when I first started the claim process, I didn't have a clue about any of it, right? I didn't have a clue about dependents. I didn't have a clue about, property tax exemptions. I mean, any of it, because there's just so much crap out there. But we almost need to streamline it a little more to be able to have any individual walk in and get tailored help to their career field, especially in the combat roles, because it does bring a lot of unique stressors. That's why combat veterans and anybody else in that role gets so freaking agitated by the run of the mill BS questions that you're like, oh my god, what are we doing? And you get freaking pissed off about it, because it's like you feel that just massive disconnect with the process itself and what your experience has been, and that process is not accurately capturing that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything more frustrating than the VA.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick, tell us about Recon and what your LLC is doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so Recon is part of the survey that we came up with for mental health intake for remote warriors. There, so our Remote Warrior LLC, we help provide education to varying groups, right? Whether that's industry, guard, reserve, active duty units, whatever. We'll partner with them and help fill these gaps. Really, where it comes to bringing the operator perspective into this. There. So that's a big piece to it right now. Like I said, and then we've got a bunch of different guides out there. I'm a PhD in psychology student, just transferring programs right now. But once that gets, I don't want to say once that gets completed, but that's going to be the focus of my work, is obviously the remote combat warriors. But I've already put, a lot of thoughts and wording down on paper, if you will. And we even created this guide called The Fog of War that pretty much just puts in plain language what people might be feeling with it. And it's not clinical. It's not meant to diagnose or anything like that. It's just really more informational, if you will, to be able to put that out there and explain it better. Right. And so I do a lot of just kind of annotating that and being able to talk with others, survey there with it. So we have 10 different guides in our library there, from transition to separation to, family members that are dealing with a loved one that, is a remote combat warrior. There they can, and it's pulled from like spouses and other family members and their experiences too. Right. And what's worked and what hasn't, kind of thing. Really what it comes down to. So that's what we offer there. The Recon survey, like I said, is a specific intake that we're working off of that framework. But it's a good way to bring in the moral injury discussion with it. And in the coming weeks, we'll actually have the actual survey downloadable on the site, so that way people can bring it into their mental health providers and help facilitate that discussion a little better than just trying to get shoved into a box there. So a bunch of different guides there. And then we also have the for anybody that deals with panic attacks, this ammo can, right? Which is like, what the heck is a plastic ammo can have to do with this? But what it's got is different things in here, like this cold pack, right? What these are called, we call them our panic packs. It's essentially, I used to get 3 to 4 panic attacks a day. I got really sick of dealing with them. I got really sick of the only thing to, what do you do when you get a panic attack? You take fucking drugs, right? And then it's like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, this is annoying. So I figured out, all right, what's the natural way that I can do this and get through it? But also play to the cognitive shutdown that's happening during it, right? Because that's a big piece, right? I can have an ice pack, on hand in a drawer, but if I don't remember where it is at that time, it doesn't do me any good. So this is meant to sit underneath a bed, sit underneath a nightstand, anything like that. Have this ice pack that you can crack, put on your chest, and your body goes, oh, hey, instead of being up here, you're right here, right? In that moment. And then it gets all the way down to like these little visual timers here to be able to sit there and just have, so it plays on all five senses. Is the purpose of this. So this is obviously the visual sense. The ice pack is more of the touch sense. And then it's got all the way down to like these little peppermint rollers, sticks. Crack it, smell it, and then it hits you in the nose, right? And goes, hey, out of here, right here, right? And the beauty of this is you don't have to remember what to grab, how to use it, anything like that. We've got a nice little cue card in here that literally walks you through each 5 cents, and then also has a QR code on the back for a Spotify playlist that utilizes music theory. Because I was a violinist for 10 years, so I use music theory with that to be able to create it and make sure there's like no loud crescendos, anything like that would overstimulate in the moment of a panic attack. Because if you never had one, they're fucking terrifying, and your brain feels like it's trying to kill you, and you don't know what's going on. And this is meant to reset that completely and pull you out of it, instead of having to sit there and lean on, oh, I don't want to call somebody because I'm a burden, that kind of stuff. And the thought processes, because those are barriers to a lot of this, right? Is the stuff that exists now, you have to physically contact someone else to get out of it. Right? Think of 988. Think of any medication, anything like that, right? That you might need, that kind of stuff. Going to an ER, whatever it is, right? I've been there, right? I remember the first time I had a panic attack, I went to the ER, and they're just like, "Nah, you're just having a panic attack." And I'm like, "What the
I
hell?"
thought it was normal. I was like,
Yeah,
this is what everyone else. This happens, right? It's totally
yeah,
normal.
exactly,
Yeah, the doctor's like,
exactly.
no.
Yeah. Not even close. And it's like, oh, here's the lorazepam, clonazepam, whatever to
Prozac,
freaking knock
yeah.
it down. Yeah, Prozac. And it's like, I'm like, I don't fucking want that. I'm like, I just want something natural that's going to freaking bring me out of it. And so that's where a lot of our focus is, the environment with it all. And we're actually working like a smart home project to be able to walk in and have like an Amazon Echo tablet that you could walk in, and my dream for this is partner with Amazon, have a custom UI that I can walk in, hit a button on it that says panic mode, and it does things like draw the blinds, does things like turn on a fan, does things like turn on a salt lamp, a diffuser, and a sound machine, right? All these things to get your brain into a place of, hey, you're safe and you're good, right? Right here, you're all right, kind of thing. And then you can go to like the panic pack and work through it, and then pull yourself out of it, and not have to just sit there and sit on the floor, bawling your eyes out, whatever, or God forbid, a freaking gun in your mouth, because you don't want to sit there and deal with it anymore, and you can't figure out why you're thinking that way, and you feel like you're the only person that's thinking that way, and that couldn't be farther from the truth, right? Everybody deals with them, in their own way, but the people that
Yeah, but you don't
experience
know.
them,
Like,
yeah,
you don't
exactly,
know.
and it's like you sit there and just fight with your own head the whole time of like, why am I thinking like this? And especially when you get intrusive thoughts and suicidal ideations and stuff, it's scary shit. So that's really the purpose of it, right? Is to be able to pull you out of that, take you out of that what you're dealing with, and go, hey, right here in the moment, right? And we have other things on our site and stuff. You can build your own, right? We're working to get, hopefully by the end of the year here, we'll have enough funds to get a way to purchase these on our site. And what that's going to entail is literally all the stuff gets shipped to me. That's what's all this drawer, this thing right here, because we've sent out about 15 of them so far, for free, for different off of donations and different things there, to veterans in need. So we provide the guides to any remote combat warrior for free. We all provide the panic pack to anybody for free, if they need one, and they're a combat veteran. There, obviously, we have to have some type of funnel intake for it. Otherwise, we just don't have the resources right now for it. But we're working that too. So, but yeah, so it's a lot of those things. And then, like I said, with the foundation piece, a large part of that will be a lot of a lot of the donations and stuff will shift over to that. There, as far as the donations of these items and different things there, and then also fundraising for those travel costs for the stellate ganglion block. there. So it'd be two different entities, the LLC and then the foundation.
Awesome. All right, one last question.
Yeah.
This is one we ask everybody at the end of the podcast. If you had one piece of advice that you've learned through your time in the military and being out for like future leaders, young soldiers coming up, what would that piece of advice be?
I would say, anybody that's the future leader or anything like that, that's coming up and you're in charge of people, you're taking care of people, right? Is learn more than what's on paper. And we say that a lot more than we believe it, right? Everybody pays a lot of lip service to that, but understanding, a team's true strengths and what they can bring into and not what's on, the little yellow or what the hell is it, little brown book and all that shit in the military, that told you, oh, at this rank you should be doing this and blah blah blah. Right? Get away from that. It's a good baseline, right? It's everything needs a baseline, everything needs structure and everything else there. But at the end of the day, people are a hell of a lot more than just what's on paper. So understanding what value they can bring to your team and where you can lean on their strengths is what's going to make an org so successful. With it and not just taking it at face value of like, oh, this person does this one job. It's like, can they bring something else to the table? Can they bolster a different area, et cetera? And also you're going to give them a reason to be there, right? Instead of just collecting a paycheck or whatnot as well. So, really it's learn your people, right? And we say that a lot in leadership and you hear that a lot in courses and stuff, but a lot of people don't put that to action there, because that's what's going to drive them to want to work for you, them to want to be on your team, whatever it is, in any capacity there, if you really play off of their strengths, right? And I'm not saying go rogue and just let them do whatever they want, but it's to an extent of just find what they're passionate about and lean on it, because when you can bring passion to a project, that's where you see the most success.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Tanner. I appreciate you coming.
Yeah, of course.
I really like what you're doing. For the people out there, check out bunker-pros.com. Check out the app we're building. We made some great progress. Went through it a couple days ago on our live. But also check out Remote Warrior LLC. Looks like we have a lot in common when it comes to the things we're trying to accomplish. All proceeds from our website go directly to building our app and helping vets. Help Tanner build his boxes to help people understand that panic attacks are not normal.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rupert. I appreciate you.
Incoming.